Sawa, wenye wanauliza we are live YouTube, we are live.
The mural incident is so important in thinking in realising who he is and what he would do if he had more power, because that was such a gratuitous act of cruelty against some of the most vulnerable people in the world. And if you think that is your route to advancement, I think it says something about you, and I'm afraid also something about the state of politics.
Well, I'm going to be very cruel now and break off this discussion because we have to move on. It's 8:31, news headlines on LBC with Darryl Jackson.
The chair of the Conservative Party's called for a by-election in Robert Jenrick's Newark constituency after he defected to Reform UK. Kevin Hollinrakes told LBC his motivation is personal ambition. Kemi Badenoch sacked Mr Jenrick from her shadow cabinet, claiming he wanted to torch the Tory party. A gunman who disguised himself as a Deliveroo e-bike rider has been jailed. 33-year-old Jazz Reed shot 3 people, including a dad and his 8-year-old daughter in Ladbroke Grove in northwest London in November 2024. And a school in Bristol is being inspected by Ofsted over concerns about why a visit by a local MP was cancelled. It's understood Damien Egan, who is Jewish, was prevented from visiting Bristol Brunel Academy following intervention from pro-Palestinian activists. LBC weather: lingering rain in eastern England will clear tonight. A few scattered showers elsewhere, a low of -4.
LBC. Chase is the digital bank you can count on.
How so?
Because you get 1% cash back on your grocery shop.
Like on prosciutto?
Yeah, prosciutto.
And seaweed crackers?
Sure, those two.
Oh, hang on. What about rotisserie chickens?
If it's in your grocery shop, Chase has got your cash back. Join today and get 1% cash back on debit card spending on groceries, fuel and everyday transport. Chase. See what your money can do. 18 plus UK residents. Eligibility applies. 1% cash back for your first year. Maximum £15 per month. Exceptions apply.
The following is from TfL.
I got loads of flowers the other day. And messages from people I didn't even know. My mates spelled out my name in T-lads. And my mom hung my favourite footy shirt on the railings. Next to the lamppost where I got killed. By a nice lady. Just someone who thought it was okay to go a few miles an hour over the limit.
Speeding injures or kills over 1,000 people in London every year. Slow down. To the Mayor of London and TfL, every journey matters.
There's one green bottle sat on my fridge shelf. This green and white bottle that supports my gut health. Beautiful by nature, beautiful by name. It's the tastiest way to up my gut health game.
Beautiful gut health. Upgrade your yogurt to the UK's #1 kefir and reset your gut health with Beautiful. Kefir is a source of calcium which contributes to the normal function of digestive enzymes. For verification of UK's #1 kefir, see beautifulguthealth.com/radio.
Cross Question with Ian Dale on LBC.
8:34 on LBC. With us we have the Conservative peer Simon Hart, Munira Wilson from the Liberal Democrats, Steve Brine, who hosts the health-focused podcast Prevention is the New Cure. That's 5 words. That's a long title for a podcast.
It is, but it kind of, we hope, gets to the nub of it. So James Bethel, Lord Bethel, and I present it, and we talk a lot about health on podcasts and a lot about politics, but we talk about health and politics. So the big health and political news stories of each week, and then we have various guests. So we had Henry Dimbleby on last week talking about food and health, and available wherever you get your podcasts, like yours, Ian.
Indeed. Jonathan, you don't have a podcast, maybe you should.
Yes. You're the second person who said that to me this week, actually.
Well, do you?
No, I don't.
Have I missed it?
You'll be the first to know about it, and I probably will ask you to fund it, to be honest.
Fund it?
Why not?
Come on here to plug it. That's apparently why
you don't need funding for podcasts. Right. And as Corey has pointed out, presidents, prime ministers, monarchs and dictators, 6 words. He's so loyal to me. Or is that Chris who's done that? OK, you're sacked. Right. Let's go to Simeon in Bath. Hello, Simeon.
Hello, and thanks for taking my call. Just on that point about health, with the Labour Party being in power for over a year now, does the panel think that the NHS service has improved, or does the panel think that it has actually decreased?
OK. Well, let's include this from the Nurses Union, the Royal College of Nursing, because they've today called corridor care a type of torture for the patients affected. Now, this is not something that's only happened under Labour. Of course, it's been there for many, many years, as many of you listening can probably testify to. Munira, the Liberal Democrats have launched a campaign on this week. We were talking to Ed Davey about it and a few other things earlier in the programme.
Well, in terms of a long-term solution to trying to improve what's going on in the NHS and tackling corridor care, we need to fix social care, right? There's 13,000 people in hospital right now who shouldn't be there because they can't get the care they need, and that is therefore not freeing up the beds that are needed, and why you're seeing people in corridors. Earlier this week we talked about putting in place a legal guarantee so that people don't wait more than 12 hours in A&E, but to my mind 12 hours is already too much. And just in the last week I've come across a couple of horrendous stories. I was out knocking on doors in my constituency on Saturday. Somebody who's currently, they looked about my age, this couple, and the wife said, I'm currently being treated for cancer. I got sepsis between Christmas and New Year, and so I had to go to a hospital, local hospital, Kingston Hospital, and they were glowing about the staff and how hard they're working in most unimaginable conditions with corridors full of trolleys. And because she's a cancer patient and therefore vulnerable, she had to be isolated. And the only space they could find to treat her and put her in was a storage cupboard. And so she was in a storage cupboard, and she said nurses were coming in and out through the night. And she didn't blame the NHS staff. She said they were doing their best. They were actually quite resourceful to put me in a cupboard. But that is the reality. I've got another close contact, somebody who works for me. Her mother's been in A&E, went into A&E. She was in the corridor for 2 days. One night she was with her right by the doors on one of those freezing cold nights. This is a serious, serious crisis. So yes, we do need some short-term fixes in terms of whether it's a cash injection to get extra beds both in hospital and in the community and in social care. But longer term, until the parties come together to try and fix social care, we're not going to be able to sort out our NHS.
Is it fair to expect things to have improved in 18 months? Because it's nearly 18 months that Labour have been in power.
Well, look, we all know that not just the NHS, but every public service was on its knees when the Conservatives left government. So clearly it's going to take a long time to turn around. They have put a lot of money into the NHS. The problem is when I talk to local NHS leaders in my patch who tell me that there's still going to have to be massive savings found, which is going to put a lot of pressure on services, is obviously a lot of that money has gone into the salaries of the staff there. And obviously we need to retain staff. We know that doctors are leaving in their droves, nurses are burning out and looking to go elsewhere. But the problem is that we're then not seeing that go into the services that are needed, whether that's in the community, whether that's preventative health and fixing what we call the front door, more GP resource, pharmacy resource, etc., to try and keep people out of hospitals. And then there's that back door that I've already talked about in terms of fixing social care.
Former Health Minister Steve Bryan.
Look, I mean, there have been improvements. I mean, I think Wes Streeting I rate Wes Streeting as a politician, and I rate him as a person. We served on the HRB Commission together after I left office, and, I rate him. Whether I rate him as a Secretary of State for Health, it's too early to say. And actually, most decisions you take as a health minister don't come into their own until long after you've left office. I mean, the trouble is that they published their plan, their 10-year plan for the NHS a year into office, and it contains some really great stuff. I mean, the ambitions around the shift from sickness to prevention and hospital to community and analogue to digital, they're absolutely right. Every health minister in the last 20 years, including me, has said exactly those things. What it didn't publish is an implementation plan over the course of those 10 years, because it's reliant on not least spending. And of course, as Munira rightly says, it doesn't even social care. So, in fact, I think the last time I came on Crossjaw, Baroness Casey was on with me, and she has now, of course, been asked to the Casey Commission. And it's all very disappointing, because ultimately what the Casey Commission is about is coming up with a number the Treasury can live with, and a policy that will go into the next Labour, which gets to the point of it not being cross-party effort whatsoever, the next Labour manifesto on social care, because the government had promised in their manifesto 2 years ago that they would set up a national care service. No one knows what that means. They don't know what that means. So That is blocking hospitals. The real sort of challenge, I suppose, for the system is that it is creaking under demand. Demand is outstripping supply, and that unless you get to the root of that, then you're going to see the system fall over. Is it unfair to expect change in 18 months? Yes and no. And actually, there has been some positive change in that time, and I think we should give credit to the system and to the ministers for that. The waiting list has come down, and just before Christmas, for instance, during the resident doctor strike, we saw more people discharged before Christmas than at any point before Christmas in probably the last 5 to 10 years. That's because there were senior decision makers at the front door, because the consultants were in charge, not the resident doctors. So, I think Wes Streeting will be looking very closely at senior decision makers in the front door of the NHS in emergency departments and how well that worked in lead up to Christmas. But he's got to stop picking fights. His row with the British Medical Association over the resident doctor strike is increasingly bitter. But I would just end on this. If you think that's bad, I think the problem with general practice is actually getting worse, because the resident doctors today will leave that residency post, and some of them will decide to become GPs, and they are being increasingly radicalised by this head-to-head with the government, and somebody needs to dial that down. In Scotland, they came to a solution with the resident doctors. They settled over pay. They're going to have to do so in England sooner or later, but they're also going to have to watch the back door, because the GPs are fuming.
Just very briefly, Steve, Mark is saying, during COVID, Nightingale hospitals were quickly made ready. Why not use a similar system now?
Oh, yeah. I mean, you could surge capacity in order to deal with the waiting list, for instance. I mean, the government, the Prime Minister has put all of his chips on recovering the 18-week constitutional standard for the NHS, which is, that you will be treated within that time. I think that is part of the story. Actually, if they want to get re-elected on the NHS, they're going to have to move the dial on GP appointments, on CAMS appointments for children and young people, and on NHS dentistry. The 18-week waiting list is only part of the story. But yeah, they could surge capacity, but of course the restraint that the NHS finds itself under every single time is workforce. Workforce is always the daily constraint, and surging capacity, you need workforce to do it.
Yeah. Jonathan?
Well, look, you can look at some of the headline stats, such as 5 million extra NHS appointments, the biggest reduction in waiting list in 15 years, I think it was today. The NHS had record numbers of treatments in 2024. But obviously, people aren't looking at statistics, they're looking at their experience. So when you go into A&E, which is people's first protocol in the NHS, my friend was saying today that he took his cousin to A&E yesterday for a fractured leg, and it was 4 hours, which probably was a bit grim, but is actually not a bad outcome in the NHS these days. So they probably had a pretty good experience. And there are so many reasons for this, and of course you can't expect things to change in 18 months. I think one really damning thing about the NHS is that there are 7% vacancies in the NHS, despite the fact that we have so many people who would like to work in the NHS. And you hear so often from doctors who qualify and then they can't get a job.
Yeah.
And
GPs in particular.
Right, exactly. And when we look at migration statistics, by the way, and some people are saying that we're going to have some negative migration in a year or two, or even less, is that a lot of people who qualify as doctors, and then they go to Australia, for example, and earn twice as much money and have a better quality of life. And so we really need to look at this holistically, about obviously patient experience, but also how we treat people who work in the NHS. I think that one of the really sort of totemic issues is how the government sort of was so cocky about how it was reducing the number of care workers coming into this country and sort of slashing their rights to bring family members and stuff. But then you look at the care sector and it's on its knees. We need people in this sector. We need obviously to train people in this country, but also to bring people. We can't just be denigrating them the whole time.
It takes us back to the start of this conversation, which is where politics is going in this country. And one of my great disappointments in this government, in the Labour government, is that they have continued the nonsense, sorry Simon, of the last government, which is about relatives and health and care visas, which is sort of this race to the bottom on workforce. We need workforce to come into this country. And if they've got a choice of going to the Sun in Milan or coming to London, but they can take aging dad with them to the former and they can't to the latter, what are you going to do? We're killing ourselves.
Just a quick one, because we were talking about whether 18 months is enough to really show any results. In Wales, where we've had a Labour government responsible entirely for the health system, which has been in office for 23 years, and the outcomes, the measurements are arguably worse than they are in any other part of the UK. Now, that's not intended to just be a lazy critique of Labour. It just shows how unbelievably complicated this particular problem is, and that it is not resolved just by necessarily ploughing extra cash into the system, crossing your fingers and hoping for the best. With us, it was GP appointments was the start of the problem. The backlog that delay caused was loading up on A&E. There were the problems with available beds in the hospitals as a consequence of that. The Welsh ambulance service. I had so many examples of people who had to wait on a roadside with a broken leg and come with their bike for 9, 10, 11 hours, sometimes overnight. Ridiculous, almost unbelievable stuff. Almost at a weekend with no emergency dentist, so a number of people sitting when I took my daughter to A&E, the number of people sitting around the waiting room with them, 2 thousands. 2,000 people in the waiting room, they couldn't get a dentist in A&E and contributed to these are management issues as much as anything, possibly helped by the way the future by clever use of AI. And management issues are not necessarily financial.
Okay, right. We've got several more questions before we finish at 9, including our final question. This is 86.
On the latest episode of The Newsagents.
The massive ructions within the Conservative Party as Kemi Badenoch strips the whip away from Robert Jenrick. What happens next?
Get the latest episode of The Newsagents with Emily Maitlis, John Sokol and Lewis Goodall. Listen or watch on our free Global Player app or the new LBC app.
Did you know Vets for Pets are
the nation's most trusted vets?
We think that's because they're
Locally owned
and locally loved.
wherever you are.
We've got a vet local to you.
Vets for Pets. We're all for pets. Based on a survey. To verify, search vetsforpets.com/all for pets.
When you're smiling,
don't let missing teeth stop you smiling. At Banning Dental, our experts could restore your beautiful smile with premium dental implants. See online for our price match promise. Banning Dental Group Clinics. Keep on smiling.
keep on smiling, keep on smiling, and the whole world smiles with you.
banningdental.co.uk.
Hillary's huge winter sale is on, and now there's even more savings for the window wise, with an extra 10% off everything until the 2nd of February. That's on top of up to 50% off hundreds of made-to-measure blinds, curtains and shutters. Plus, keep the cold out and the cozy in with free thermal lining on our favourite curtains and Roman blinds. And don't forget, with Hillary's, measuring and fitting is always included. So get window wise and book your free in-home appointment today at hillarys.co.uk. Conditions apply.
Looking for a fixed passive income backed by real demand? With ulesprosperity.com. You buy the car, we rent it from you for a set period. You stay the legal owner and we pay you up to £600 per month in fixed rental income. No hassle, no maintenance, no tenants. It's a straightforward asset-backed rental agreement. Visit ulesprosperity.com for conditions and to learn more. That's ulesprosperity.com. Simple, steady, secure.
Cross Question with Ian Dale on LBC.
8:49 on LBC. If you didn't know, Simon Hart wrote a book about his time as Chief Whip. It's a bit more than Chief Whip. It's called Ungovernable, and it's out in paperback, isn't it? It's actually sold rather well, isn't it?
Yeah, it actually does, I'd say.
Well, not many political books do, and I know that to my cost.
The best week I had was actually the week up. It came out in February. The we sold most copies in the 2 weeks up to Christmas, and so I'm sort of a bit amazed, really.
Munira, have you read it?
No, I haven't.
Shame on you.
We didn't put an index in because we knew if we had an index in, people would just look to see if they were in it. If they weren't, they wouldn't buy it. So we left that out on purpose.
I know. I'm debating whether to do that with my forthcoming book. That should have an index, possibly not. Right. So Simon is here, Munira Wilson, Steve Bryan and Jonathan Liss. Now, a WhatsApp question from Sam in Surrey. Why is Keir Starmer so quiet? We have an awful lot of national and international problems at the moment. Surely if he was more visible, it would also give the public a bit more confidence. Steve Bryan.
Oh, well, I don't think he's quiet. I think what he says is generally waffle. But I'm amazed he commented on today's Conservative Party reform stuff. I would just stay above it as a Prime Minister and rise above it if I were him. I mean, the point that I was saying earlier when I was rather flippantly saying, I don't really care about it all being about Robert Jenrick, is that all the problems that the country has right now and all of the U-turns I'm sure you've been talking about on the programme, Ian, in the last months that they keep happening, the 13 U-turns that have happened, is that, having been a government MP who was thrown out of the parliamentary party by a Prime Minister, which happened to me with Boris Johnson over the Brexit legislation, I can tell you that once MPs get a taste for rebellion, once MPs get a taste for thinking for themselves, it's very hard to put that back